Ho, 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 and happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, and all those good things that come this time of year. It is great to be with you and our friends and our listeners and our viewers and everybody that's watching. It's a very festive show, as you can see. I've redone our studio here in our Bristol studios, and I am Dave Stevens, and it is great to be here this time of year. Hopefully, you've got all of your Christmas shopping done and everything's ready, and you can just sit back and listen to tonight. Of course, I got to bring in my co-host from Duluth, Minnesota, where it's a little bit cold up there. They've got that nice giant storm that they had, but they dug out of that. Troy, you had an amazing weekend witnessing one of the greatest football games probably in the history of the league as far as that comeback, the Vikings. So welcome, and tell us a little bit what Sunday was like watching that Viking game.
Sorry, the first half was pretty brutal, but we stuck with it and saw the largest comeback in NFL history. So that was very nice. And I was at the Miracle in Minneapolis, or Minneapolis Miracle, back in 2017. So I've saw two of the greatest comebacks in Viking history so far. So it's awesome.
And speaking of, I don't even say it's a comeback, but our guest tonight, he had longevity. And we're bringing in, I could spend a half hour introducing this man. He's a Hall of Famer, 287 career wins, 3,701 strikeouts, two World Series, two All-Stars. He led the league in strikeouts. He was also a pretty good hitter, but I couldn't find any video from back in the 70s. But joining us today is Hall of Famer and legend and just an all-around great guy. Bert Blyleven joins us tonight. So, Bert, coming to us from a warm Florida, thanks for being a part of Geary, Stein and Stevens, my friend.
Dave, great to see you as always, meeting you over this. And yeah, I feel sorry for you, Troy, up in that Duluth area. I would a lot of times, I'm still with the Twins, but a lot of times we go on the winter caravan, Duluth, and boy, how do you live through that? Unbelievable.
Yeah, it's cold, and thank God that when you were with the Twins, you mostly played in that Metrodome. But Bert, do you look back? I look at that kid who came up in the major leagues in 1970. That young, clean-cut guy that ended up doing pretty well in the major leagues. And we take a look at kind of where you were over the years, that skinny little kid. But does it seem like it was just yesterday, or does it seem like it was a long, long time ago?
You know what, Dave? You know, memories are there, and gives you know, as someone who's able to play 23 years, I did miss all right shoulder surgery, but other than that, great memories throughout my life, going to Texas, Pittsburgh, Cleveland, back to Minnesota, and then out to California. But yeah, a lot of great players. You know, when I first came up, Rod Carew, Tony Oliva, you know, Bob Allison. There was just a great ball club. Came back in '87 when we won the World Series. Of course, there's Ken Herbeck and Kirby Ayeti and Tom Bernansky. We had a great ball club led by, you know, Flo was, you know, he and I kind of took charge of the pitching, and
We're kind of watching your highlights career here of just some amazing, just to watch your beautiful motion. I think baseball said that you had the best windup in the history of the major leagues, and I don't know, if that's hard to live with. But as we take a look at what you did, tell us about that windup and where it came from and how you ended up kind of emulating one of the greatest pitchers of all time.
honest with you, when I first came up at the age of 19, I threw like a javelin thrower. My going toward third base line, I wasn't really utilizing the lower part of my body. It was Marv Grissom back in 1970, and he said, you know, the way you are pitching, you're going to hurt your shoulder, you're going to hurt your arm. And what he did is holding chair and laid it on the mound exactly where my left foot said, I want you to open up and utilize the strength of your body and to deliver toward home plate. And I looked at the chair And of course, playing high school ball and signing in the minor leagues, I was kind of conditioned throwing across my. And I did ask him. I said, Mr. Grissom, I said, what if I land on that chair? He says, well, then you. So what he did is he opened me up to where I could, utilize, which is of course your legs and your back, and that became my delivery and carried me for all those years, pretty healthy. So I was very lucky.
And I know, you patterned your career early after, I guess that you could call him another Hall of Famer, the legendary Sandy Koufax. And as we kind of take a look, I notice a lot of similarities. But you as a kid listening on the radio to Vin Scully describing that, I mean, how much did that impact in how you started pitching?
Well, I learned my curveball listening to Vin Scully describe Koufax's drop in my curveball. You see right there where Sandy is straight over the pitching rubber space side, and he really came through. And of course, back then they had 17, 18 inches high, and then after the 1968 season, they lowered the mound to 10 inches, so the drop wasn't as it was, with Koufax and Drysdale. So we had to kind of learn how to pitch. And, there's ways to do it, kick out a little more extra dirt and try to create that good downward plane toward the hitters. Back then we were strike zone. In today's game, it's pitch up in the strike zone. The game has changed a lot. I'm very, very happy both of you guys pitched when I did. When going 9 innings and pitching a shutout and give was something that I took a lot of pride in.
You had arguably one of the best curveballs in MLB history. Who helped you develop that pitch?
It was self-taught. Vin Scully described Koufax's drop because what I wanted to do, if they're the right-handed hitter, I wanted it, to start at, say, his left shoulder and work down or away. So, yeah, the follow-through was very important. You saw me right there. You got to reach out. That's, to me, the work part of pitching is when you work out front with all your pitches. So, yeah, a lot of celebrations, a lot of great baseball, and I look forward to it. When I first came up, we pitched every fourth day. Later, you pitch every fifth day. But I always wanted to be, the ace of the ball to me. And you go about your business, and you hope you get swings, and you go about your job. That's what it was. Again, I was very, very fortunate to pitch as long as I did.
Bert, you were lucky enough to be a part of the We Are family, which was kind of the first World Series I started paying attention to in '98, and you had a different role in that. And then '87. I mean, people don't. They always say compare, compare, compare. You had Willie Stargell, you had Dave Parker, Omar Moreno, Tim Foley. All these amazing characters on that team. I mean, is there one that was more rewarding than the other, or are they both, the same because of what you had to do? I mean, how do you compare a World Series champion when you're a part of both?
Well, of course, family. That was the first opportunity I had to pitch in a World Series, and Chuck Tanner. You mentioned Willie Stargell, Phil Garner at second, Foley at short, Lee Lacy, Bill Robinson out left field, Omar Moreno in center, Dave Park, Nicosia, Manny Sanguillen behind the plate. We were very, very, excuse me, and it was just a matter of, going out there and doing that was to, beat the other team. And even though we were down 3-1 to the ball, Willie Stargell was back. He took us to the promised land, and we ended up beating 7 games. So I know Oriole fans are still upset about that, but big deal. In 1987, we only won, I think, 85 games, and I kind of the underdog. We weren't supposed to beat the Tigers in postseason, weren't supposed to be in the World Series. And lo and behold, we brought the first world champion to the 5-state area up in Minnesota. So very, very proud to be part of that.
Out of all your career accomplishments besides the Hall of Fame, which one are you most proud of?
Of course, the 2 World Series, and then having the opportunity to get the 14 years to get into the Hall of Fame. My numbers didn't change. I always tell people so long. I said they finally counted my Little League wins, but I was never considered myself a strikeout pitcher, even though I ended up 3rd on the all-time strikeout record. But I man on third base, 1 out of strikeout, and a lot of times I was able to do that. Not only, people do talk about my curveball, but to me, everything keyed off my fastball, control of my fastball. When I was 19 years old, I had the opportunity to sit down in the dugout in Angels. I was with the Twins, and I got to listen to Don Drysdale talk personally for about 15, 20 minutes. Of course, Don Drysdale, better he was, he'd knock down his mother if he had to, for him to get the win. So everything that he taught me, I kind of put that in to be as a pitcher. And that's a guy that attacked the strike zone. I didn't walk a lot of guys, but that's part of the game. So I do have one record that'll never Joe DiMaggio's 56-game hitting streak. Nobody will give up a season. Nobody. No, yeah. I did it. I led the league in innings pitched, and I think I won 15 or 17 games. So you go about your fence in Minnesota at that time with, I mentioned before, with Herbeck and Bernansky. So I knew I was going to get some runs. You just don't want to walk anybody. So a lot of them were solo home runs. You win some games, you lose some games.
Oh, the memories of the Homer Dome and the Baggie. And we'll continue this journey down memory lane with my buddy Bert Blyleven. Troy coming back the next segment, but there's still some great Christmas ideas out there. So, hey, we've got a few things that we could ask you to add to that stocking stuffer. So don't go away. Geary, Stein and Stevens coming back.
We told you all year long, and now we have new power. We ruined all our homes and stretched out all our hollers. So freshly dressed, that's the time to go. With hundreds of amazing trips and places to spend your dough. Oh, freshly dressed, will light your shopping load. And save you more when you check out the GSS show code. The GSS show code.
Merry Christmas, Pete.
Merry Christmas, Mom.
I think there's one more present for you.
It's a Manscaped package with lotions and sprays and trimmers. And where's the lawnmower? Hey, there's a note. Dear Pete, may you have a Merry Christmas and a smooth New Year. Oh! Shop now at manscaped.com.
Welcome back to Geary, Stein and Stevens. I'm Dave Stevens, and Bert Blyleven taking time out of his busy schedule down in Florida where it's much nicer weather. And Bert, as you watch the game, you see these, players now, and we talked about it, like when you would have, I don't know, how many complete games in a season and all those innings pitched. And I think you probably had more in your career than baseball has had combined in the last 3 or 4 years. I mean, do you like the way the game has changed where a pitcher is 5-6 innings and he gets to move on?
I had an opportunity after my career to broadcast for 25 years for the Minnesota Twins. Circle Me Bert. But you know what? I got to watch, when I retired a couple years after I retired, I had the opportunity to work with Dick Bramer for Twins
Welcome
TV,
indoors to the Dome. Dick Bramer,
but
Bert Blyleven
I
for
did
the
find out
opener
one thing
of
on
the series between
radio.
Minnesota and Boston. Now, this
But,
Boston team is very
they
good,
put
but the
me on
twin starting
TV. I don't
pitchers.
know why. During the game today, I don't like all the analytics. I know that's part of the game. Prior to every start, you go over the hitters with your catchers and, see on what the scoreboard dictated sometimes how you would pitch. I see is starters only going 5 innings, 5 or 6. And if you get 7 inning play game. So we never had the pitch count. I don't like the pitch count. I don't know who came up and put everybody under one hat for that. But it's a different game today with, relief pitchers, all the specialists. And when I came up in 1970, we had a 9-man pitching staff, 4 starters, a couple of relief that were waiting for one of us starters to break down. And my 1970 Paranowski, that were our kind of closers and setup men. So, and relievers than 1 inning. They weren't Rivera, they weren't Hoffman, they were Osage and Eckersley and those type Raleigh Fingers type guys that would come in the 7th and save the game through 9 innings.
Yeah, 3 inning saves. That's a man's job. That's when a fireman and relief man. And you touched on it a little bit ago as far as what you got to do after your career. Again, a great long 25 years in the broadcast booth with Dick, and but the phenomenon that you started of the Circle Me Bert. If you could just talk a little bit about the origin of that. And did it blow your mind that it became national, that other teams were aware of it and they had signs and everybody wanted to have you circle them?
Dave and Troy, it really started with Fox giving me a telestrator. Of course, John Matt, he was the best as far as how he used a telestrator. I didn't want to follow the ball, into left center and say, this is the flight of the do with this thing. We were in Kansas City. There was a Twin fan sitting up high, and we're, in my ear, try to use the telestrator, try to use it. So I circled a net. I said, you're hereby circled. Thanks for coming. From there, he brought a sign. I remember that it said, Detroit Lakes. So we came to see Bert. We drove 656 miles, I believe, from Detroit Lakes, Minnesota. We came back home. There were more signs. We had a lot of fun with it. And it's just for us up in the booth to interact with the fans. Baseball is a fans game. I think had the opportunity to have families come, and I met so many people. Gail, a lot of times would go out in the stands and get really unusual sign up to the booth between innings, and I would meet the people and sign the sign and with it. It was a great way. And I said, when did you make the sign? He said, we did it this afternoon. Staples or somewhere, and picked up the board, and they got all to put on there. And I think what I remember one time there were that made a Circle Me Bert sign, and they had actually hole in it, and they were between innings, to get circled, and I believe I circled them. So that's the way the game of baseball should be. It should be fun.
You were a notable prankster during your player days, earning the nickname the Frying Dutchman. Tell us how that started, and I heard you had a lot of fires in the Angels clubhouse, and they had signs on the fire extinguisher that it was just you. Just put it out.
Well, you know what? It came down to starting pitcher. I got you pitch when you pitch, and all of a sudden, what do? You just sit there and watch the game, which I did, but I could have fun that were not in the game. They would be my victims as far as maybe lighting their. Don't do this at home, please. But have a lot of fun with it, and putting their hat. Always something that you tried to just loosen up and have a good time as a team too, because we're together from spring training, middle of February, into late October, November, if you're lucky to be in the playoffs or World Series. So get along with everybody. And as a starting pitcher, when I had those days off, I learned that from my pops. My dad, we're born in I was born in Holland, and every night we would have steak and potatoes, even though we didn't make a lot of money. There was, but my dad would always have a joke. He'd always he was my mentor, I think, growing up, and I miss him to death. But I think about him.
Bert, I've been so lucky to, become friends with you over the years, and to, you've seen me play, I've seen you play. I used to interview you, and we've become friends over the years. And it's very humbling for me to have a friend like you, where we chat, we email, we text, and those kind of things. I mean, what what was your impression of this legless guy when you saw me? I'm not asking you for you know to give me compliments or anything like that. I'm just wondering. I always wondered what it was like when you saw a guy on crutches or a guy with no legs at the baseball field, and we became friends. I mean, it still shocks me to this day that you and I have become so close.
I think, Dave, anybody that knows you, you really are. What you have dealt with through your life, your everyday business is an inspiration. It should be there. And yeah, those pictures were taken in Boston. I remember I met you and your son out there. Great time, and everywhere. And I follow you, Dave, a lot on Facebook. We communicate back and forth, and you are a good friend, but you're an inspiration.
Well, that means a lot coming from a guy like you. And speaking of inspiration, Troy, you got an inspiring question now for Bert?
Well, I got a question. You waited a long 14 years to get the call Hall of Fame. Can you describe that call when the phone rang?
Well, I live here in Fort Myers, Florida. They had brought a crew in. I remember talking to Gary Carter. His wife, his daughter was going to get married, and everybody said Gary, so they delayed the wedding, and lo and behold, he'd not a year. So, after the 10th, 11th year, you prepare for it. Are you going to get inducted or not? But as it got into the year, I thought, well, maybe it wasn't meant to be. The numbers are there: shutouts, the complete games, the victories, the losses, everything was there in the Hall of Fame. It finally, for some reason, in 2011, my name was called, and I was at home in Fort Myers, Florida. Here, and there was a camera crew that wanted to come in, and I said, no. If I go in, but it became almost I didn't want to do what Gary Carter had to go. Gary Carter grew up in Southern California, where I did, and he was a good friend, and I still miss him.
What's wrong with baseball though when we have a guy like Tommy John with 288 career wins, and it takes so long? It's not like you did anything against the media or burned anybody or anything. I just don't get, when they'll take lessers or they'll talk about it, or we're talking steroid eras, and there are still people out there that are worthy. You were worthy on that first ballot. I still don't understand why that journey took so long, but you know what? You're there. You got to live to enjoy it. Your family saw it, everybody. But what's wrong with baseball and these old time writers? Do they need to die off before, we don't get to keep Sid? We had Sid for 100 years, Sid Hartman, the famous writer in Minnesota. But I mean, what is wrong with these beat writers and these guys that think they know baseball? They're not on the field doing it.
Well, I've had the opportunity, I think, now that I'm in the Hall of Fame, to be on the Veterans Committee. Very proud that we finally got Tony Oliva and Jim Cott in. And you mentioned Tommy Wens. My goodness, they named a surgery after him. And you look at his numbers, why there? I don't know. As a writer, 15 years, you had to wait on the ballot as long as you had over 5% of the votes. And now guys are getting to the veteran committee a little bit quicker. And like Fred McGriff inducted into, or, he's going to be inducted in the Hall of Fame in July. Fine to the Veterans Committee, and I think the Veterans Committee have made up of 16 members, a panel of 16, and half of them are players, people. And I think, you have to go in basically fighting for guys that you feel that the writers, it's something that they've always had. So don't take it away. It has to wait longer.
Well, I'm glad the wait is over, and we got to wait for one more segment. When we come back, we'll hit him up of the guys that he didn't like to face, some of the guys he did like to face. Maybe we'll ask him about pucks. So don't go away. You're watching Geary, Stein, and Stevens.
Ho, ho, ho! Happy holidays! I'm Santa Dave from the Geary, Stein and Stevens Show, and I'm getting ready to give all the good boys and girls Manscaped products, except there's one problem.
The problem is you can't keep Manscaped on the shelves in the stores. So go to manscaped.com, type in the code GSS Show, save 20%, and get the Manscaped products. And poof, overnight, we've got Manscaped products. How cool is that? That means that by popular demand, they had to fill these shelves, all of the amazing products for Manscaped. And as I said, you get 20% off using the code GSS Show. You don't have to come to the store. Go online to manscaped.com, put in the code GSS Show, and you can get all of the amazing Manscaped products.
And if you like the way I look and the way Troy looks, well, of course, we owe that to Fresh Clean Threads, freshcleanthreads.com, where you can dress and feel better and you don't have to pay exorbitant prices. You just have to look good. With Henleys and all of the things they have, you can still have time to order those and get them in time for Christmas. And if you order, type in the show code GSS Show, you get 20% off. So please make sure you go to freshcleanthreads.com, type in our show code, and of course you have all those stocking stuffers that you can fill, and you can look good, and you can wear the shirts like I have, and of course Troy's wearing them. We're very lucky and blessed, and of course Bert, I'm sure you manscaped over the years. I was in those locker rooms. I saw naked Dave Winfield, and I saw naked Tony Oliva, and I saw some people that probably could have used some manscapes. That would have been great for you to prank, to maybe put in a little nair or something in those Manscaped products, and we would have seen some hair that would have been removed that they didn't want, right?
I used to put some hot stuff in they would watch them run around a little bit quicker than normal. So we did have fun with that too.
Bert, we talked a little bit about the good seasons, and then of course you said that the seasons where you gave up all those long balls. But again, those were individual singles, and you got 287 career wins to show for it. But over your years in the era, and you faced some great guys in the 70s and the 80s, and then in the 90s. I mean, who did you hate facing, and then who did you wake up every day knowing that they didn't want to face you?
That's a good question, Dave, because as a pitcher, you go into a ball club, say your sucks, and Ron Kittle was one guy I think I gave up the most home runs to. He's not a household name, but in Chicago he is. He had tremendous power against him. But, people ask me too, who was the toughest hitter you ever faced? If you're 1-0 going into a ball game in the 7th or 8th inning, any number 3, 4, or 5 guy in the lineup, I always looked at when I went into it, the first 2 guys out. That especially in the lineup. I'm talking about the lineup. Those are the 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 guys. Sometimes are the guys that had the power. It's changed. Judge is leading off now for the Yankees with 62 home runs that he hit last year. But as you looked at it, the 7, 8, 9 guys are the guys you have to keep off the bases because you turn around again. So every game is different. I'd like to say that I threw in day out, but you don't. It's how quick you can adjust to what you have. Again, every the fastball, and being the pitching coach for the Dutch team when the WBC is in Taiwan on March 8th against Cuba. A couple of weeks to train before that. And as a pitching coach for them, it's the fastball, both sides of the plate, exactly what Don Drysdale told me when I was 19 years old. Be afraid to knock somebody on their butt once in a while if need be. Watch the hitters, how they go about that. So it's just it's a matter of staying aggressive. It's a matter of that you have, even though it might not be the best stuff you have that day. Again, if it's a 6-0 lead compared to a 1-0 lead, or you give up any more because your offense is struggling that day against another good pitcher. When I came up, I was very lucky to pitch at the out at the Metropolitan Stadium in the bullpen area, where Jim Cott and Jim Perry, 70, they warmed up along with Tommy Hall and Dick Woodson. I would go out there and watch. I wasn't pitching. I'd go watch them. But 10, 15 feet away was the visitors' mound. Catfish Hunter and Ken Holtzman and, anybody, great pitcher. I would watch what their routine was. And could that routine that they had influence me on being a better pitcher? So I was always a student of the matter. Now you have to control what the good Lord gave you and how you go about being the ace of the ball club. What do you have to do? You have to go deep into the ball game. You have to get in the game as best you can and just bust your tail end. When you're only at 35, 40 starts, that's not that many, but you got to be able to pitch. I know in 1973, I pitched 325 innings that year. So I averaged over 8 innings a start. That to me was a perfect season for me. 17, I lost 17 ball games with a 2.5 ERA. I was out there every fourth day at that time, and I gave it you can ask out of a starting pitcher.
Speaking of the World Baseball Classic, can you describe the honor of representing Netherlands as a pitching coach? And have you ever before had any aspirations of getting into coaching?
Actually, when I retired, the opportunity to go into the minor leagues and be a roving. Then I went through a divorce, and I ended up taking my 2 boys to Minnesota when they brought. So, no, I broadcast for 25 years. Being born in Holland, Zeist, Holland. My mom and dad were born in Holland. They met when they were 13 years old. It was a great love affair. The years that they were together, maybe longer. But, yeah, the Dutch team is a great honor for me. Bam, Hensley, Mullen. Got a great coaching staff. I just was down in Curacao about three weeks ago looking at some of my first WBC was in 2009. We ended up ice in Puerto Rico, which was great for Dutch baseball. And then we advanced to the finals as we did in 2017. So, yeah, Dutch great players coming out of not only Holland, but also mainly Curacao. That everybody down there does a great job of getting these, especially middle infielders like Gregorius and Simmons. And I'm missing some right there. Some great athletes coming out of Curacao.
Well, we have to root against you, of course, when we're watching you, but it's still great that you're in the game. Can you teach someone to throw the curveball like you did? I know you threw it differently. I think I've seen where you threw, but then you put your finger under the ball a little bit to show. Do you have a ball handy you could kind of show us?
Yes, I do.
Can you teach that, or is that just some feel you get?
Handy. I threw it basically like I'm going to move it. Ball. If you're looking at the ball and you're reading the ball like this right here, I just put and I'm going to move back a little bit this way, and so my thumb was as I tuck my thumb underneath for my curveball. Why? Because I tried, and then my ring finger, as I move it over, ring finger utilize that, little finger utilize that seam. So when it came off, it snapped. You want to figure off the ball. So you want to utilize the seams. I felt comfortable because of my different. And I'm glad you mentioned the curveball too, Dave and Troy, because I didn't 13 or 14 years old. My dad heard an interview with Ben Scully and Sandy Koufax. Never had a son. He wouldn't let us, because he had the arthritic elbow. He wouldn't let us throw a curveball at a very young age. I would not have my son throw a curveball until he was about 30, develops a little bit better. So kids out there, learn control of the fastball. A changeup is a great pitch, but if you're, utilize that baseball to make it rotate. A lot of guys will throw it, this way because they aim there. But when I did that, my thumb was in no man's land. So just using all your fingers to get on top of that ball like that and create.
Well, I know the youngsters are starting to see your stuff because I sent you a clip. I think it was a couple years ago during COVID when I was playing some online baseball, and they threw you in the game, and my kids were just mesmerized by. They thought it was some sort of made up windup, and they really did capture you in the MLB The Show, and it's still great, and I'm hoping you can teach more and more of these guys in the game. Like it's kind of like the knuckleball. If you don't have somebody that can teach you that had the success, we're going to see it being a dying art because everybody wants to throw fast. We want 103-mile-an-hour guys, 102-mile-an-hour guys, and their arms are going to be burnt out in 4 or 5 years. They're going to have surgery. They won't come back the same way. So kudos to you for that longevity and doing what you've done over your life. And speaking of longevity, you can now watch us on your home TV, by the way, Bert. You can see the Geary, Stein and Stevens on yourhometv.com. We get to replay our great shows with you and Linda Cohen and Lee Steinberg and all these guys. So we hope our fans out there that aren't listening via the podcast can watch us on yourhometv.com. It's a great way. You can just type it in, pop it in your TV on all your smart TV. I am smart enough to have a smart TV, so we appreciate everybody's, watching us, seeing us, and tuning in and making us a success, especially when we get to have guys and guests like Bert Blyleven joining us. So it's been a really awesome night, Bert. Troy, you got any final questions for Bert before we let him go?
Yeah, I got one more. What was your favorite memory of the late Kirby Puckett?
There are certain guys that when they walked in the clubhouse, Troy, that they had almost the feeling of pucks there. What a charisma he had. What a great. He was just one of a kind, and I think of course you have Harmon Killebrew, you have Kirby Puckett, you have Torrey Hunter. The guys are what they're there, and that they come in with a very positive frame of mind. Lost 6 in a row. Here comes Puck. Let's go, guys, let's go. Just a great man. Maybe his off-field things weren't the best, but everybody loved Kirby Puckett.
Yeah, I loved him. We were great, to be around him. He could never get my name right. He always called me Steve-O. He could never remember my Dave, and I was Dave Stevens, and it was always Steve-O, Steve-O, Steve-O. But,
he called me a lot of names too, yeah.
Well, Bert, I want to thank you for being a part of our night. And again, thanks to everybody out there. And of course, our sponsors. Again, you can get some great Christmas presents at the end of the year. You can go to manscaped.com, type in the GSS show code for Manscaped and get 20% off because, we all need to get cleaned up a little bit in certain areas that we have. And if you don't like that, oops, sorry about that. That's our next guest, Fresh Clean Threads, 20% off for using that GSS show code. And if you want to lose weight, because we're going to be eating a lot over the Christmas months here, where we got New Year's Eve and everything coming up, go to athleticgreens.com/GSS. to get AG1, some great food that supplements. You know, you don't have to spend lots and lots of money on all kinds of things. So again, we appreciate our friends, our family, and Bert, we enjoyed having you, man. We could go another hour talking about your career and the amazing things. And I'm just glad you're still out there kicking. What are you doing? I know you're still doing a lot of charity work and things like that. And how can people see you on social media?
Well, I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. You know, I follow a lot of folks right there. They're nice. I try to stay very positive. I don't get into the political world. You know, if somebody has a birthday, my wife and she does a great job of also handling Facebook. Some happy birthday. Try to stay positive. It's a negative world, but you know, before I leave, too, I want to wish everybody a very Merry Christmas down here in Florida. Of course, that did a lot of damage. It's tough down here right now, and our prayers are with everybody out there to have the best Christmas they can with their.
Well, thank you for being a friend again. It's so great to have had you on the show. I can't wait to see you again in Florida. Hopefully, at spring training, and that's a wrap, Troy. Not a bad show to have a Hall of Famer joining us tonight, right?
Yeah,
Merry
really
Christmas.
appreciate you. Really appreciate you
Right.
taking the time out of your busy night to join us, Bert.
Anytime, guys.
All right. Well, for Bert Blyleven, Troy Geary, and our good friend Will Stein, who's on assignment somewhere, I'm Dave Stevens. That's a wrap. Happy holidays. Happy Hanukkah. Happy Kwanzaa. Even Festivus if you celebrate Festivus. So from all of us to all of you, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and circle me, Bert. Don't forget to circle me.
There you go.
Take care, everybody.
Dave, you're here by circle.
Love y'all. That's a good night.